So as you can see here, I've had a bit of a go at this. I've popped this chip out. It's the only one that I can pop out, to be honest. And there's not really any oil under there as such. So I shall just pop that back into place for now. There was a label down here. It's like a test label with a signature on. I've taken a couple of photos of that. I tried to peel it off, but it's that saturated in oil, it's just disintegrated trying to get it off. These two stickers up here, they seem to be alright, but these are a plasticky type of label, so I think that's why they've not been affected. But the rest of the board otherwise looks reasonable. One other thing I've noticed is these caps are not looking too promising. They've got a little bit of a hump in them. The one on the left certainly it's more prominent, I think. And the one on the right I think is also starting to go, so they're going to need changing really. It may be that they all need changing. I don't know. It's something I'm going to have to look into. This cap over here looks a bit unhappy as well. Some of these look a bit on the piss, shall we say. I don't know if they were manufactured like that. There seems to be quite a few this end like that. It's nothing that I've done since I've had it open, so yeah, there's a few bits to look at. You'll also notice I've had the modulator cover off over here, video modulator cover, because that was quite rusted up. Funnily enough, that had actually got a bit of grease on the underside of it, so how that's got so far through this, I just don't know. Some bits seem to have it on and some don't. All these cables, all these little wiring looms, they're all a bit saturated in it. They're all going to need cleaning. This front panel's got a bit on it, so that's going to need cleaning up. The CD-ROM drive, some of it's alright, some of it's not. These motor labels seem to be alright, and they are papery labels, yet there's a label down here on this part. That one's quite saturated in oil, so it just seems to be a bit hit and miss. So it is all going to need a much better clean, but for the moment this is a start. Okay, so I've done a bulk of the cleaning now. This is just really a preliminary type of clean, just to get the main muck and grime and this oil off. This insulating layer that goes under the board, that's clean now. There's still rust stain on here. I don't know if that's something I can get off or not. I don't think there's any actual rust as such in there, but it would be nice if it could be cleaned. It's probably stained. These cables were also all caked in oil, so I've had to pretty much wash these down and then blasted the ends of the cables with the air compressor just to get the water out, and then dried them. There's 3 of them. They feel a bit almost like silicon wire, so I don't know if the wire is normally like that or if that's just the oil that's got onto them and it's made them all soft. All these other bits are cleaned up. This is looking a lot better now. I took the modulator cover off. Even there was a bit of an oil residue inside here even. That's all corroded still. I've not done anything with that yet. Same with this. Is a part of the CD drive that locks the disc in. A magnet that side, and it's like a steel disc this side. So I'll probably clean this up with some wet and dry or something, and might even spray coat that with a bit of undercoat or something just to protect it. Cleaned up this. This will need testing and checking because it wasn't working quite right, and I don't know why. So I'll need to mess about with that. See if I can sort that out. That's the thing that latches the door open, or should but doesn't. Another part of the CD mechanism, that's fine, there's no problems with that. And then there's this bar which, as you can see, is quite corroded up, and this is what was holding the door onto the top of the chassis, the CD door onto the top chassis, while I was struggling to get out. So what I'm going to try to clean this metal bar up is some of this Auto Sol metal cleaning polish. A bit of it on a tissue, and then just sort of rub this through there. You can see all the crap and the metal that comes off. It's just a slightly abrasive cream. It polishes. Now that should go back in a lot easier and the door won't stick at all in any way. This won't cause the door to stick. So that looks a lot better now. It is still tarnished, but it's not rough like it was, so it won't stick. The casing, this is the bottom shell. There's still a lot of this rust residue in here, and it's actually like a surface roughness to it. You can feel it sitting on the surface, so I'm going to need to have another go at that, but the majority of it's gone and it's clean. And you can see underneath here the stickers have gone. I took the laser warning sticker off because that was saturated in oil. There was no point keeping it. I also took these off, but I removed these before I did any work because I wasn't sure whether these would deteriorate or not. But they're actually plastic labels, so they probably would have been alright, but I've took them off and I will put these back on at some point when I've finished all the cleaning. And the top half is looking a lot nicer as well. The only downside to cleaning it is you start to notice all the marks and scratches that are on it because they weren't showing up before. There's no rust in here as such. There was a tiny bit in this hole here, which is still a little bit of residue, but it's a lot better. And obviously that's come off and that's all nice and clean as well now. As you can see, that hole I made is not visible when it's closed, and it's certainly not visible when it's open either. I haven't actually done anything with the shielding yet because, to be honest, at this stage I don't know what to do with it. I think what I'll probably do is douse it in some WD-40 just to stop it rusting any further, and then come back to that. The boards are not too bad either now. There may be a tiny little bit of oil residue on these still, but generally they're alright. The best thing I think with these will be to give them a good wash down with some isopropyl alcohol and brush them down properly at some point. And this one is also, the main board is also a lot better, and the bottom's not too bad either, as we've already looked. As you can see here, I found some information about the power pin outs, and the CD32 needs a plus 5 volts and a plus 12 volt, and there's a ground, and one of the pins is not connected. So I used a little multimeter to test the power supply just by touching on the end of the DIN plug, and everything tested fine. I have powered the CD32 board up with that. I also did some basic tests on here. I checked there was no shorts between the 5 volt and the ground and the 12 volt and the ground without the power connected. And I've obviously visually checked it. There's nothing obviously wrong. So there was no direct shorts anywhere. I did try and power it up, but it wasn't working. I wasn't sure why. And I'd left it powered on a little while, and then I noticed this. I don't know if this will show up. So maybe I'd see here, there's a slightly discoloured patch on the top of that. That was actually raised and it was red hot. And I was testing the power supply again. I was testing the board, testing on the actual board itself. So I was testing on the back here of the power connector, and then I was testing power coming through the switch by touching the terminals of the switch here, just to make sure there wasn't a problem with the switch and it wasn't providing power, and the power was coming through. And then I tried it again and I was getting 0 volts on everything, and that's when I noticed this slight problem here. So it seems to me that this power supply has burnt out and died. It may be that someone just plugged it in, tried it, it didn't work, and then they unplugged it, whereas I left it plugged in, and if there's a short in here, then that's given that short time to cause overheating in the power supply. Even if there was a fault that was causing a direct short somewhere, I would have expected this to either cut out, or a thermal fuse to have cut out long before the plastic casing started to melt. So in some respects it's better that this has failed as it has, so that I now know not to use this. Well, I can't now because it's dead. So I've been doing a little bit of research on these, trying to find out how reliable they are, and I did come across a video where someone was actually opening the casing up and stripping the insides out and replacing the power supply. So what I'm going to do is at least take the back off and get this DIN plug lead out, try and cut that out, and then I'm going to hook this up to my bench supply and see if I can get that working with the CD32 board, which will be a little bit safer as well because it's got a degree of protection on it. So I'm just going to try and get this off. case of levering it from what I can see. Although quite tough. I think there's clips, or it's plastic welded. Yeah, so there's like alignment clips here, and you can see they're in this potting compound. So that's the insides. So you've got your mains coming in here, a transformer, and then these will be your outputs. I assume there'll be some, and I assume in here there'll be some kind of regulators and rectifiers to give us the appropriate power output to this. Now, I don't know if I can break any of this up and get any more of these wires out. Try and get as much out as possible. I also remove plugs on leads where there's bare ends. That way no one gets electrocuted accidentally. So I'll put this on one side, because obviously this has still got the grommet on it, so that could be repurposed for a new supply. I don't think I'm going to get any more of this out of here, unfortunately, which is a shame. No, that's just pulled off, so that was obviously attached to something. It looks like there's some green PCB just below the surface there. It's interesting that there's 4 wires here though, when only 3 of them are supposed to be used. I'm going to snip these so I don't damage the wire. Now I did try and plug this back in again after it cooled down, and it did start to warm up again here, so there's obviously a short in the transformer that's still there. So after I'd cut these wires off the power supply here, I decided to trace out which of these coloured wires went to which pins, worked out which should have been connected to where. I've got this that I downloaded from the internet, which shows you all the 5 volt, 12 volt and ground connections and which are which. I hooked it up to an old bench supply. Unfortunately it's still not powering up, so there's a number of things it could be. Obviously these caps are not in good shape, so they need replacing. I've also read that there's certain resistors on the board that can quite often blow, so that's another possibility. I wasn't really too happy with the video footage I did of me tracing this out and wiring it up. It didn't exactly go very well, so although I'm not got no problem showing videos where I've done things wrong, I think in this case I'm going to redo it, and what I'll probably do is make that the next part to this video, go through the testing I've done, go through the tracing out of this a bit better, and then from there perhaps I can trace things a little further. Maybe there is a resistor near where the power's coming in that's blown, or some other component. Because it may still work, even though these caps these definitely aren't in great shape, and there may be issues with the other caps. It could still work. It could be the caps, it might not be. So I'm going to call it quits on this video for the time being, and we'll resume this in part 3.